Wherever you're tuning in from, this is the Investors Corner, where we explore hidden treasures. My name is Tech Stephen Ugut, and in this episode, I'm glad to be joined by the Director General of the National Communication Authority, Mr. Napoleon Adok. Guy, thank you very much for giving us your time, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tech. Thank you very much. Good to join you.
Indeed. We will begin this episode by first getting to know about NCA, the National Communication Authority. We understand your motto is relevance and innovations. Your vision also, which stands for affordable access, quality ICT services throughout the country. Let's talk about that. Since your vision is to provide affordable and accessible ICT across the country, maybe you can begin by telling us roughly right now as we stand, what is the level in terms of percentage of connectivity of South Sudanese to the telecoms?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the National Communication Authority is the government body that is tasked with the responsibility to regulate and promote the use of ICT and telecoms in general. What that entails, it means that it basically manages the spectrum, the radio spectrum of the government of South Sudan, of the country, and it allocates licenses, it monitor operations of these licensed companies. So far, South Sudan, just after independence, had a total of 5 operators. Majority of them inherited from Sudan, that is Zain, MTN, and Sudani then. And 2 operators that were in the liberated areas, that was Gemtel and Vivacell. In the course of time, many of them could not sustain their operation, like Gemtels and Sudani went off the air. And in 2018, also Vivacell finally had to suspend their operation voluntarily because they failed to meet the tax requirement of the government. And so we were left with Zain and MTN. Zain and MTN are actually operating on the Sudanese license that was issued by the Sudan before independence. What our country did was to harmonize so that we are able to regulate those licenses to see them to come to an end. And most of them now will come to an end in 2 to 3 years, so that we can now begin to discuss a sovereign license issued by South Sudan. In terms of coverage, of course, biggest challenge has been the infrastructure. I would say up to now, roughly with our connectivity, the subscriber total in the country is close to 4 million subscribers. But of course, when Vivacell closed down and many people lost lines, so subscribers dropped significantly to around 3.5 million. So that is already building up again with the new coverage coming up with the introduction of digital, which is a new entrance in the market and is still mainly in Juba. We think that the numbers will go back up, because when I took over in 2020, August, I came up with a clear agenda to promote connectivity. Because in the absence of connectivity, our people will not get online. So far, even the quality of those networks which are in place are still questionable, partly because of the logistics of ensuring connectivity, relaying data, bringing telephone to remote areas, making handset affordable to our people, and trying to restrain the private operators not to increase the prices, which is a challenge in the face of inflation. So really, it's a slow progress, but it's in the right direction.
Good. That means, based on your explanation, 4 million subscribers, that brings it to our estimate of 12 million population of South Sudan. That's just about quarter percentage of the country is connected right now to the telecom companies that are operating. Now, what is the plan of NCA to ensure that at least we reach the half threshold of the connectivity of South Sudanese?
There are 3 steps to that in the plans. The reason I chose connectivity as my agenda for my term is precisely to increase the number of subscribers. And to increase the number of subscribers requires significant investment from the government. First is to develop infrastructure. So we are encouraging the investors to extend and develop the infrastructure. in telecom infrastructure consists of three main issues. One is the data connectivity, the other one is voice connectivity, and the other one is the service connectivity. So on voice connectivity, which is our most urgent, is that so that people are able to make a simple phone call in a remotest part of our country. That is what we have been focusing on together with our partners, the licensed operators, the MTN and Zains. They have been very forthcoming in that. Also, we are trying to encourage the government to do direct investment in the area of this infrastructure. One of it is also purchase of towers directly using the Universal Service Access Fund, which is the revenue collected from the operators out of their operation fund. So quite a work has been done in that, but it's not enough. My appeal has been and still is that government must directly invest so that we bring connectivity to our people. And when government invests, we cut down the cost. Not only the cost of investment from the operator side, but even the cost of these services. So it is a form of subsidies. When we own the infrastructure, then the operators can use it. So without that, of course, it's going to be a slow progress. But so far, last year, the President pledged one of our appeal is to ensure that the government exempt import tax for telecommunication equipment in order to accelerate and to incentivize the investors. So if you don't give the investors something in return, it becomes a challenge for them. They don't see telecom is a number business. So telecom companies would like to be in places which are highly populated so that they can get return in their investment quickly. But as government, ours is not about where there are a lot of people, but even those remote locations like Majong Nyintio, like Pachala, like Buma, those places like Raja are significant to us because of security and also economic development. Without communication, these places remain dormant. So that's why we push for direct government investment.
Yes, and picking up from that point, these companies are private companies, as you mentioned, and income and profit is one thing that is leading their businesses. And the government, on this perspective, would only be requesting these companies maybe to establish in certain places that the government deems necessary. But what would be most important and what would be anticipated by many people is for government to invest in this telecom in itself by establishing a public telecom company that would be providing these required services to the people at these areas that would not only be tied to the profit, as you mentioned. What is now the plan for the government to establish a public telecom company?
It has been in the policy for the last perhaps 7 years that the government has already recorded that there was an intention to establish a public telecommunication corporation that would be entirely under the government of South Sudan. But of course, like all many other policies that lack resources to back it up, so it has remained on paper so far. It is so on the outset, yes, it was in a plan by the ministry to establish it, and what has not materialized is getting the capital to actualize it or partner to do it together. So, but again, even in the absence of the public corporations, government has the opportunity to incentivize and to extend beyond just commercial return. And that's why the use of Universal Service Access Fund. This is a fund that is collected and is managed by government. And that fund is mainly to invest in those places that are not commercially viable or which the government has interest to install communication, like security locations, places of IDP where people are returning back, where commercial operators don't see return. So it's basically, in another way, a form of subsidies. And when you are engaged in that, is as good as the public service. Globally, in the liberalized economies, so people are getting away from government-operated entities to allowing it to be done by private sector, so that government focuses on regulatory. And I believe our economy is within the borderline of liberalized economy. So that's why it's very hard to get somebody to say, I want government to operate a mobile company.
Yes, and it's still also on the telecom companies. You've mentioned that during the independence we had a number of telecom companies, of which a number of them has liquidated or dissolved their companies for reasons known to them. But one noticeable dissolution of a company is that of a Vivacell that raised an eyebrow during its dissolution. What exactly do you think led to the dissolution of Vivacell, considering that there was a lot of stakeholders, customers that had a lot of a stake in that company? That company just dissolved. People didn't know exactly what happened. There were no clarification for the public.
The issue of Vivacell is a bit tricky because I wouldn't call it dissolution as such, although I am restrained by a legal requirement because we are in court with Vivacell, so therefore I don't want to jeopardize the case. But in a general term, from a government perspective, Vivacell was not dissolved. They voluntarily left the country because they want to stick with the laws that are outside our country. They want to stick with the license that is not recognized by our country. So Vivacell is simply saying that I don't recognize South Sudan. They recognize the New Sudan that was administered by civil administration of New Sudan under SPLM, which was a non-entity. So they've been told to conform so that they recognize our laws, and they said no, and they voluntarily suspended their own operation. Legally, they are still around because their offices are here and they have representatives around. So it's only the telecom part that has suspended operation. So it's not dissolved.
Good. Since the matter is in court, we should leave it at that point. But moving on to other matters that are still of telecom interest is the advent of mobile money, which is all over in the region and across the world. In South Sudan, these mobile money services companies, for example, the Mgurush and the Nile Pay, they are independent companies that are entering some sort of an agreement with telecom companies. But in the region, you find it is the telecom companies that establishes these services within the telecom. Are there any sort of a regulation or a control by NCA towards these mobile service money services?
Actually, what happened in South Sudan is a paradigm shift. We are learning from what happened in East Africa. In East Africa, where giant telecom companies also own mobile money. And that has given them enormous power, both on financial sector and telecom sector, which is creating a monopoly. Now, for your information, Safaricom and the others in East Africa, probably they are in a deal to try to separate M-Pesa from Safaricom. That is in public domain, and that's what happened. So in the region, there was a policy to separate mobile money from telecom operators, so the telecom operators remain as infrastructure of communication, and mobile money are in the borderline of financial sector. So a mobile money license is actually shared regulatory between the telecom regulator, which is NCA, and the central bank. So in the telecom sector, we do regulate technology, which they use to transact those finances, while the bank regulate the issues of monetary, because this is really a big issue. So on our side, what we focus to do is that we try to set up, we license what we call mobile money platform. Now, a mobile money platform is basically technology which allowed people to transact, creating wallets, but then we separate it from a network neutrality. So a network in relation to mobile money is just an infrastructure. So what we wanted to do is that a mobile money must remain independent, that they will use any telecom company to access the mobile money, like the way you use Wi-Fi to access your wallet. It should be the same you use MTN or Zain. So this is the ship that the rest have gone in, and the advantage of this ship is that we came late to this business, so we chose the best instead of repeating the mistake done by others. And the mistake done by others, now they are trying to decouple them. While we started that, they should be separate. That's how Nile Pay came up, Mgurush came up, even though they don't own a mobile company, but they are linked through what we call USSD code. So when you start those *12135#, that is an USSD code. It's an infrastructure access for connecting it. You could as well use a Wi-Fi, you can use any other infrastructure. So our approach in South Sudan is to make sure that mobile money start as an independent entity that is regulated independently away from the telecom company, so that there's no monopoly. Otherwise, telecom company own mobile money, it becomes difficult for us to control them later.
Yes, so you're saying this is something that is encouraged by NCA and to some extent also is regulated by NCA jointly with the financial institutions. And also in terms of regulation, we understand that NCA not only regulates the telecom companies, but also the media institutions that own towers, because these towers are part of the within the jurisdiction of the National Communication Authority. We want to know how much of a regulation and how much of input does NCA has on media institutions that own towers or antennas within the city and across the country. But maybe before you answer that, let's go for a short break. And when we come, you elaborate more on that.
Thank you.
Investors Corner takes a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. There are plenty of investment opportunities in this world's youngest nation of South Sudan. To better understand the economy and explore the thriving market of this country, you ought to get out of your comfort zone. You either hustle under the scorching sun in Corner-Nca market, run errands at a small or medium business enterprise, or better yet, chair a conglomerate board meeting at a high-end tower in Juba. While awaiting an official business trip to the region. Whatever you do, just don't rest. Work hard, think big, and be smart in order to count all your economic blessings through this weekly business show of the Investors Corner, exploring hidden treasures. Join us every week at this time. Hello and welcome back. This is the Investors Corner where we explore hidden treasures. I'm your host, Stephen, and as I told you before the break, I'm joined by the Director General of the National Communication Authority, Mr. Napoleon Adok. Thank you and welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before the break, I was asking you about the level of control that and regulation, for that matter, that NCA has on media institutions that own towers and antennas in the country.
Well, we don't just only regulate the towers and antennas in relation to media institutions. We are also part and parcel of media regulations in partnership with the Media Authority, because media are also engaged in communication in one way or another. So we do collaborations in discharging regulatory responsibility with the Media Authority. The Media Authority focuses on content management and content regulations and methodologies and all the other journalistic aspects, while the NCA focuses on technology, on radio spectrum, the frequencies, and the setup of this. So indeed, we do regulate these people who operate or own radio stations across the country, and we have quite a number of radio stations, FM. We also do have regulation on how to install, operate, and manage a tower, different heights, different locations. So we are involved in the communication infrastructure in general. So and this is something that is part of our responsibility.
Yes, I understand South Sudan is not yet a country that has reached a level of, owning or controlling satellite devices and equipment, but there are media institutions, satellite-based media institutions that are operating in South Sudan. Are there any form of a control or regulation to these kind of institutions that are satellite-based in South Sudan?
Yeah, just to correct you that we do regulate satellite. There are no satellite that operate in our country without approval from us, because we are part of the international entity that regulate these satellites. So two things that a satellite need to do before transmitting in our country. They need something called landing right. For the satellite to transmit to a sovereign territory, it needs a landing right, and a landing right is sought from the regulator of that country. Also, if a satellite is going to do orbit in your orbit, it also needs a passage right. So these are all involved. There are free broadcast satellites like the one you use for international medias that also still require coordination with us, because they use radio frequency to transmit here. So we do have a couple of them that has sought licensing from us to operate officially, and there are a couple of them that are operating what they call the transits. If somebody is coming to just do news coverage, like now Pope is coming, and a lot of journalists have requests that they are bringing their terminals for broadcasting, for live broadcast, and we are telling them there's no need for that because we do have a high-speed internet thanks to the fiber. And so this is part of the regulation. In the past, in the absence of a high-speed connectivity, they would have to ship in their transmission satellite, like we have seen with SSBC. You guys be running on SGN satellites. So without approval from us, it wouldn't work, because even if you do it with impunity, we still coordinate with our counterpart globally. That is the international law that requires us. So there are satellite companies, not that they are broadcasting locally, but they're just, we are at the consumer end. And for your information, by the way, we have a satellite slot for South Sudan. NCA has secured a satellite slot for communications and for broadcasting. So these satellite slots, it means that if we have the right investment, we can launch our satellite also to have our own satellite in our territory. It may sound absurd now, but it's practically ready.
But is the country ready for this kind of a technology system?
We should be ready because we are at the bottom. We are the new one. So when you are the new arrival in technology, you can always use the best. You don't need to go and inherit the old one. Okay. So we are ready. If we have the right investment and a good political will, we can make the leap. There's nothing that prevents us.
Yes, speaking of internet connectivity and fiber optic, South Sudan has embarked on introducing the fiber connectivity from the seaport of Mombasa, I believe, through Uganda, which has reached here. We have seen the launching of a number of internet fiber-based companies like the Trinity, Liquid, and Orange, and all this. What does the advent of these technologies means for the internet connectivity and ICT in general in the country?
Well, first of all, fiber is best described when you contrast it with the non-fiber. What is fiber? Fiber is basically high-speed capacity at the rate of 1 gigabit per second, compared to what we had before the fiber, which was the highest speed we got is 100 megabyte, which is extremely slow and expensive. That was satellite. So the advance of arrival of fiber in our country, which I think is only still limited in Juba because it's not going out. So I would not celebrate it so much because only people in Juba have access to fiber. So that still remains a challenge. I will only celebrate fiber when we are able to pull a line from here to Wau, to Malakal, and to maybe places like Yambio, so that our people are truly connected. The fiber, of course, increase the uptake of technology. Most technology now are connected. People want to go online to watch video, to watch TV, to do news and all this stuff. With the fiber being availability, we give us the broadband connectivity. So connectivity in our country will definitely leapfrog. Innovation will begin to catch up. All the digital services that are now being promoted, like e-government and e-services that the government is trying to implement, will now be executed on that. Because without a high-speed connection, you cannot do anything in the e-sector. Because like things like telemedicine and e-learning, it's not possible. You have seen now the number of lectures Jama Juba has been able to do thanks to fiber because they have a better internet speed, so lecturers can join online lively to share in discussion. So this is what fiber will do. But of course, government still need to do a lot for us to be able to truly appreciate the difference, because it's still very costly. Right now, internet prices have not gone down.
Mm. Yes, and still on the fiber and internet connectivity, there are criticism to the connectivity in South Sudan, at which the cables, instead of running underground, they are running on the electric poles and they are running above. Is that the best approach that South Sudan is going to use? And also, to have a double-barreled question, if you may, the issue of advent of internet and fast internet comes with also its own issues, like the cyber crimes and the hackings and all this. What is NCA putting in place to fight this kind of a thing?
First of all, to answer the first part of your question about the fiber deployment, the overland is an international acceptable way. There are special cable for that. Of course, it's not good for a long distance, but it's usually good for what we call the last mile within the city. So in every city, you will always find fiber going up, and usually along with the electricity pole and those that. What we discourage is across the country on land, because then the vulnerability are so many, because the cables are exposed, pole can be knocked by cars and so many things and disruption. So the standard is to deploy it underground and to deploy it along with the road infrastructure. So when roads are built, fiber conduits are actually required to be put in the road. And the fiber conduits are usually empty pipes, which are pre-positioned so that when the fiber is come, it is blown through so that it is connected. This was not done when Numili Road was built, so these people had to improvise. And that's why now there are so many frequent cuts, because as the fiber business companies rush to Juba, some of them, I believe, they took the cut corners in order to rush to Juba very, very fast. Right now, I've asked them to go back and redo it according to the international standard. You might have recalled in 2020, I had to challenge and suspend some of those operators publicly in order to go back and redo it properly. Because when you invest in fiber, you invest for 50 years plus infrastructure. You can't dig it up again. And you are investing for the future of internet, because today the number of people who are online in Rumbek might be into thousands. But come 10 years, it can be easily go to 1 million. So you deploy a fiber for a million people, even if today the consumer are still few, but you deploy for the next generation. You don't deploy for today. And that's what we did, and I'm glad to announce that they did correction measures, and now they are redoing their deployment, and we should be seeing them actually heading to Rumbek soon.
And tell us briefly about South Sudan Gateway and its functions.
South Sudan Gateway is an idea that was conceived way before independence. I told you earlier about the 2 operators that were launched in territory of Southern Sudan then. Along with those concepts was to have truly independent, and one of the independent key asset is international gateway to route and receive traffic from international channels. So that project went on under the leadership of Honorable Gier Chuang, and it was actually what led to the building of this building where we are doing the interview was designed for the gateway. And of course, like all the other projects, it is stalled at some point, but thanks to the wise leadership of our Minister, Honorable Makwe, he was able now to encourage and push for a public-private partnership with a Swiss company that were able to actualize, invest their money, so that in return we share the proceeds. So South Sudan Gateway is an asset of the government, operated by the ministry, and generate revenue for the government of South Sudan. And they've been doing a significant amount of revenue coming in to the government, and also giving visibility to our people in terms of international traffic, and also regulatory visibility. So it is a government project that I think is meeting its requirement. Lately they've also been doing in recruitment of a large number of young people, which is really good, and doing training. And right now, as I understood, there are the projects to build, I think, a 5-story building for a data center, for government data center. So this is a very serious concept that is being implemented, and I'm glad it is operational because I was part of it.
Good, and also we'd like to know about the campaign of the Northern Corridors One Area, One Network that was pushed through the East African region, calling for an improved connectivity of both ICT and also the LAPSET project, which was mainly about road connectivity but also has the aspect of ICT promotion in the region. How does these projects faring so far, first of all, in terms of progress, and how would South Sudan benefit from such projects?
Well, the One Area Network is actually a child of the Northern Corridor Initiative projects. Northern Corridor Initiative project is a project that was initiated by head of states of 4 East African countries: Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan, and Rwanda. And that project has so many elements in it. It has element in infrastructure, business integration, and the port in Lamu. With infrastructure, communication come in. So we are foreseeing that when these roads are built, definitely there will be communication infrastructure will be integrated. Now, the other existing infrastructure is what they endeavor to unify, giving our citizens in the region to be able to roam free, so that we remove the roaming charges from, so that the slogan actually is that roam like home, so that when a Kenyan come here, he's able to use his phones with less charges the same way he is in Nairobi, and vice versa for South Sudanese, which has actually been helpful for many people. So some of those with the children in schools are sitting in Juba are still able to do transaction with their Kenyan line. But of course it has limitations. Some of those limitations, the owner is not an indefinite roaming. So like a free visa. So free visa is not an indefinite visa. So when you go into a country, the maximum they give you 3 months. And when 3 months finish, you are expected to regulate. So we are also, South Sudan is behind in implementing the owner protocols completely, because we don't have certain infrastructure in place to regulate the visitation of citizens across the border. Because some of the elements we have to implement with the immigration, because to be able to tie the visa with the telephone numbering and with the SIM card registration, we have not been able to achieve that. It is in the pipeline with the immigration. So I think at that part we got a raw deal, but we are trying to do the best we can in order to consolidate, because it also became a security aspect. You probably, I don't know if any of you has visited Uganda lately, they have implemented it. So when you arrive, Your visa is registered, it's free, and you register SIM card, it's attached to your visa. When your visa expired, your SIM card also stopped working. So it's the same thing.
And also something that Uganda has implemented, which most people would consider bizarre, is the charges for the social media. Is that something that South Sudan looks into it or appreciate?
You are behind news because that charges has been lifted already. It is not there. So yes, it is not as bizarre. It is also, all these are tools for being able to improve the services in the country. So sources of revenue sometimes lead us to take certain measures. Yeah, we have not yet taken that. We could not contradict ourselves to that extent to restrict the internet. We actually don't consider ourselves owning an internet now, because what is here is coming through a private sector. Until the government will do a proper investment and we control the cost of internet in our country, then we can now be free to leverage whatever we want. Right now we are just encouraging connectivity, and our tone is to encourage the investors to expand services within our country.
Yes, you mentioned earlier the cooperations between these media institutions that were passed by the Parliament, the NCA, the Media Authority. We'd also like to know the level of cooperation between NCA and her sister parastatal like SSBC, the institution I represent, because SSBC also holds a very key facilities and services that NCA could play a key role, like the towers, like the satellite transmission of SSBC, like the relaying of SSBC broadcasts across the country, which as of now is still a challenge. What can NCA do to ensure that they support their sister institution like SSBC in one, making sure that they can have across countries coverage on terrestrial, not only satellite, both TV and radio, and also on satellite to have a faster and more accessible transmission of SSBC channel across the world?
On the outset, we are all under one leadership of Honorable Michael Makwei, the Minister, and our work is cut out for us. And at the technical level, we are cooperating very well with SSBC, and we actually factor them into our infrastructure development. When I call for infrastructure, it is a holistic infrastructure that allowed our television and radio and telecommunication to communicate. And this is something that is usually neglected, because when people talk about infrastructure of communication, you think of telephone. It also includes the broadcasting as well. And I am ashamed that up to now, our citizens in the far side of our country are unable to see our television, neither listen to our radio. Why is that? When the technology is available, when the infrastructure is available. So we are working to correct that and to make sure that before election, our country is covered both in the broadcast of television and also radio. And the way to do it is to accelerate this infrastructure development. With the fiber now going inroad in the country and also bringing up communication tower across the country, we are now looking into technology to ensure that we at least have a relay station in the capital cities of the 10 state and the 3 administration area. These things are easy to implement. SBC, on the other hand, we are working with them also to try to see how fast can we move to the digital platform, which make it very easy for us to support them in terms of signal relay and transmission and all that stuff. So we are working very closely with SBC, working out strategies, also trying to incorporate the engineers to work with our people, because at the end of the day, we are the one that assign them frequency digitally and would like to protect their broadcasting ability to do that. So our effort as technicians, we are doing a joint force to benefit from our mutual skill and also to accelerate and also give you guys the platform. Other work that you may not know, actually now we are building a satellite ground station that should be able to address the issues of SSBC transmitting across the country, because when we have our own satellite relay, it's just a matter of putting a terminal in Wau or in Yambio and you will be able to transmit at any capacity that you want. So ideally, I'm looking for a time that SSBC work 24 hours and have multiple channels so that our children can have a dedicated channel for them and other channels, so that this is where our kids are lacking behind.
And as we edge closer to the end of the program, your plan of action, both short, mid-term and long-term, and your takeaway point.
Well, my plan of action is actually to accelerate connectivity. And connectivity is not only communication, it involves including your broadcasts. That is what I am driving at, and that's what my agenda is: connectivity, connectivity, bring connectivity to our people so that those who cannot watch video can at least make phone call. That is number one. Number two is also to invest in digital literacy. As the world moves to digital economy, you need to prepare our citizens to benefits. Otherwise, we are disenfranchising already our generation coming if we don't prepare them now. And the best to prepare that is to see the schools are moving to teach children about digital equipment and protect them. And as you said earlier, that we are going into the cyber space, and it comes with the challenges. With the cyber criminal, if children are not sensitized, they become victims. So we are also investing in digital literacy awareness, also cyber security awareness that are addressing school as we speak. Our team is in Bor actually, meeting the journalists and the school leaders and making this awareness that will be going around in the region to sensitize people, because as the technology is coming, it also comes with the risk, and we need to prepare our people to protect themselves and to benefit from it. What I would take away from this is that NCA appeal to the government to invest, to recognize technology as the backbone for building an economy. And if we are going to be part of global economy, we should not neglect the technology. We need to invest directly in order to control cost of it.
Well, Mr. Napoleon Adok Guy, the Director General for National Communication Authority, thank you very much for giving us your time and elaborating on these very crucial topics that our viewers would indeed love to know. But in the meantime, thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And this brings us to the end of our episode. I've been your host, Tech Stephen Ugut, on this Investors Corner, where we explore hidden treasures. Until we meet again, goodbye.